Hello, good morning everyone. As you all know, the schools have reopened and students are enthusiastic to take part in all sorts of activities. So today we all have decided that today we are going to have a flipped classroom where children will be taking up the roles of different characters of the story The Enemy, which is written by Pearl S. Buck. So here we start.
A fisherman perhaps. Look, he's wounded.
Oh, how is bleeding?
What shall we do with this man? The best thing that you do is to turn him back to the sea.
Yes, undoubtedly, that would be the best.
But the strange thing is, we can't leave him.
The kindest thing that we can do is to put him back into the sea.
If we can put him back to the sea, he will surely die. But if we treat him, then he will be respected.
He's a white man.
Sadao and his wife were in a dilemma when Sadao found that the man clearing the cab had US Navy written on it, which perhaps showed that he was a prisoner of war. Sadao and his wife were patriotic towards the court and duly considered Americans to be their enemy. But the human side inside them did not allow them to toss back the wounded man directly into the wide rocky ocean. Then they thought of the servants who would not allow harboring an enemy at their house. Only knowing that this would affect Sadao's reputation, they still decided to go ahead and keep the king home. They launched him into the Sadao's late father's room, which had complete jungle setting without chairs and no falling bed.
He looks like an American.
He's a white man.
US Navy. American warship. He is a prisoner of war.
He needs to escape, and that is why he's wounded.
Yes, perhaps.
Come, are we able to put him back into the sea?
I will be. Will you be able?
No. 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 Then there is only one. You must carry him to the boat.
But the servants?
We must simply tell them that we intend to hand him over to the police as a prisoner. And we must reach Sadaw. We have to look up to the case and position. We are all endangered if he stays here and we do not hand him over to the police as a prisoner of war.
Certainly. I don't think of anything else.
Then we must carry him to the boat.
Yes. He's so dirty.
Yes,
Yes, wash him.
surely. I'll tell the servants that he's here. I'll tell you, she will leave the place for a few minutes and she'll wash him up.
You tell me. I will tell the others.
Yumi, come. Clean him up. I'll not wash. I've never washed a white man. And I'll not wash a dirty one too now. You will have to do what the master commands. Very well. You understand? We only have to bring him back to his senses so that we can hand him over to the prisoner. We can hand him over to the police as a prisoner of war. But I have nothing to do with it. I am a poor person. I will not wash him. Then it's not good. Stupid you. Is this anything but a simple man? A wounded, helpless man? I think I will have to wash him. Sadao, have you decided to operate him?
Yes. Get me some electricity.
I have never done it before.
It is an easy solution.
But how I must do it?
Saturate the water and place him near his nostrils. Then he breathes that, put it down. Yes, it is late. You have to turn him over.
I told you, you should not watch now.
Did you watch it then?
Yes.
Good. What?
Sit down. He's saying something.
What? Guts. Take off my guts. Don't lie to me if you want. I'm not doing this for my pleasure. I didn't know why I'm doing this at all.
Oh, I cannot watch this anymore.
It is an initial for her confused hour. Ouch. I don't want you to live. I don't want you to die either.
The gardener said he was a specialist in moss garden and worked with flowers all his life. He also made a finest moss garden in Japan for Sadao's father.
The young master is so proud of his skill to say that he can save any life.
But it is the children of whom we must think. What will be their fate if their father is condemned as a traitor?
On 7th day after that, in morning, two things happened. In the morning, servants slept together. When Hannah woke up, she saw nothing was done.
If the baby misses me too much, send for me tonight. I'm going to my own house and you know where it is.
Thank you.
She made the breakfast and Sadao helped with the children. They both did talk about the servants in the fact because they were gone.
Now, why we don't know what we ought to do? Even the servants can see more clearly than us. Why are we so different from other Japanese?
Sadao did not answer. Later, he went to the prisoner's room and saw.
Today you may get up for 5 minutes and walk for it. And tomorrow you will do it for twice the time. Okay?
Okay, doctor. I'm also thankful to doctor for saving my life.
No, don't thank me to adult.
In the afternoon, the second thing happened. Hannah was working with the flowers in the veranda and saw a messenger came in the official uniform. Her hands went weak and she ran to Mr. Sadao. But till then, the messenger followed her through in the house, and Hannah pointed at the messenger helplessly.
Ding dong. What is it? The general is in pain again.
Is that so?
Isn't it enough?
Oh, I'm sorry.
My father, I must get rid of this man for your sake.
I thought he came to arrest you.
Yeah, I must do that.
Mr. Sadao goes to see the general.
Of course, I understand fully because once I took a degree from Princeton, so few Japanese have it.
The man doesn't need anything to do, but the success on his operation,
You are right. You can tell anyone.
not more than one.
Then certainly it would not be happened to the you.
Why is it we cannot see what we ought to do? Even the servants can see more clearly than us. Why are we so different from other Japanese?
Take care of that.
Sadao did not answer, and later he went to see the prisoner and said to him,
Today you may get up for 5 minutes and tomorrow you'll have to do that for twice the time and walk away for it.
Okay, I ought to thank the doctor for saving my life.
Don't thank me for it. Start working.
in the afternoon, the second thing happened. Hannah was working with the flowers in the veranda and she saw a messenger coming in the official uniform. Her hands went weak and she ran to Mr. Sadao. But
Indeed it is. I'm very sorry.
Come fast. Come here. For your sake and his sake, even I have to take care of this man. Dr. Slava goes to see the general.
Of course, I understand fully because once I took a ticket from police sir, so do check his habit.
I care nothing for the man, but the success on his operation was
Well, you are very skillful. You can save anyone.
not more than one.
You cannot be arrested because next day would I have an operation.
There are other surgeons, Excellency.
None I trust because the best one has been treated by the Germans and they would create operation successfully even if I die and I don't care about their views.
I'm not quite sure about it, but for your sake, I'll give it a try.
It is very unfortunate that the man has come to your doorstep.
Yeah, I feel it myself.
It would be quite good if he would kid, but not by you, but the man who does not know me. I have a parents. I will send them to your house tonight or any other night.
Certainly, that would be very natural. In fact, the door is open every night.
Good. They are very capable. They can remove the body also without any noise.
Certainly, that would be the best, my Excellency.
He then left the general's presence and went home, thinking over the plan. In this way, the whole thing would be taken out of his hands. He would tell Hannah nothing, since she would be timid at the idea of assassins in the house. And yet, such persons were certainly essential in an absolute state, such as Japan was. How else could the rulers deal with those who opposed them? Sadao did not let anything but reason be the atmosphere of his mind and entered the room where the American wasn't there. But when he opened the door, to his surprise, the young man was out of the bed and ready to go into the garden.
What is this? Who gave you permission to get out?
I'm not used to take permissions. Because I feel good enough. But when the muscle on this side remains there always.
Yes. Is it so?
Now I think I provided you enough.
I'm taking over as Sadao from now. Massage will do it if exercise will not.
I won't bother you much. See, doctor, I have got something to say. I haven't met a job like you. If you won't be there, I would have died.
Sure, I know. Perhaps I think you should have asked more.
If all the jobs were like you, there wouldn't have been a war.
Yes, I know. Good night.
Sadao slept badly that night. Time and time again, he woke, thinking he heard the rustling of footsteps, a sound of a twig broken, or a stone being displaced in the garden, a noise such as men would make who carried a burden. The next morning, Sadao made the excuse to go first into the guest room. If the American was gone, he could simply tell Hannah that so as the general had directed. But when he opened the door, he saw at once that there was on the bed the shaggy blonde head. He closed the door again quietly.
I'll be in a day or two, I promise.
Okay. The next night certainly must be the night. There rose a quiet wind that night, and Sadao listened to the noise of bending doors and whistling partitions. But when they woke up in the morning, the American was still there. Then, the third night, of course, must be the night. Next morning, the American was still there. Then, the third night, of course, must be the night. The wind changed to quite rain, and the garden was full of noise of dripping leaves and running springs. Sadao slept a little better, but he woke up at the sound of a crash and leapt to his feet.
I shall go. Really is right. What is the matter with you, Sadao?
Please, okay, it's me.
This terror infected her, and she stood breathlessly, waiting. There was nothing but silence. They crept back into the bed, the baby between them. When he went to the guest room in the morning and opened the door, he saw there a young man. He was very gay and had already washed and was out of the bed. He had asked for a razor yesterday and had already shaved, and today there was a faint color in his cheek.
I am well.
Yes, I think you are well. And I think if I put my boat in the shore tonight, you are ready to go to the nearby island, which is always empty and it gets submerged during the monsoon season. But it's not the monsoon season right now. You are safe there.
Do I have to?
Yes, you have to.
Did not see him again until evening. As soon as it was dark, he went down to the shore and dragged down the stout boat down to the shore. And in it he put food and bottled water that he bought during the day, as well as 2 quilts that he bought at a pawn shop. There was no moon and he worked without a flashlight. Then he came back home and went inside as though he was just back from work, and so Anna knew nothing.
Yuki was here today. She said she misses the baby so much.
The servants will come back as soon as the water is gone.
Okay.
He went into the guest room that night and carefully checked the American's pulse, his heart, the state of his wound, and his temperature. The pulse was a little irregular, but maybe it was because of the excitement.
You say the man escaped.
He had been operated upon a week before, an emergency operation for which Sadao had been called in the night. For 12 hours, Sadao had not been sure that the general would survive. The gallbladder was much involved. But then the old man started to breathe deeply again and to demand food. Sadao had not been able to ask about the assassins. So far as he knew, they never came. The servants had returned and Yumi had thoroughly cleaned the guest room and burned sulfur in it to get the white man's smell out of it. Nobody said anything. But the cardinal was a little cross because he had got behind with his chrysanthemums. But after a week, Sadao felt that the general was well enough to be spoken about the prisoner.
Yes, he has escaped, Excellency.
Did I not promise that I would kill him for you?
Yes, your promise was very excellent.
You know that I was suffering from a good but you know that it is not done. I have pocket.
Yes, I know.
You are a good man. You will be rewarded.
And I understand your zeal towards your enemy.
But Sadao that night, looking for a spot of black in the twilighted sea, had his reward. There was no prick of light in the dust. There was no one on the island. The prisoner was gone, safe doubtless, for he had warned him to wait only for a Korean fishing boat. Sadao was out on the veranda, gazing into the sea, from whence the young man had come. And then, without reason, there came other white faces in his mind that he had known. His professor, at whose house he had met Hannah, and his wife, who had been a talkative, silly woman, but she tried to be kind. His old professor of anatomy, who has insisted on messing with the knife, and his old and staggeringly landlady. Sadao had great difficulty in finding a house in America because the Americans were prejudiced against them and he found it very hard to live there, knowing their superior. How he despised the old woman who had at last consented to to let him live in his house on an old miserable home. There was a time that Sadao tried to be gracious to her because she had nursed him back to health in his last year from influenza. But the old woman was no less repulsive in her kindness. Then Sadao remembered the haphazard and white face of the young man, white and repulsive.
Where did he go?
He would have been reached a safe journey. Strange, and I wonder I could not feel it. And why did I tell him?
Oh, you guys are back? Ma'am, we have come to know that the POW has gone.
Yes, gone.
The moral is that this story is a great example of how clear sympathy demands a fellow feeling. Thank you.